Creality. At this point in time, it's probably the most well-liked and trusted brand of 3D printers coming out of China. Now, I have had the pleasure of reviewing two of their printers. The first one being the CR10 Original. This is the first one they released, and it's really the printer that launched them as a brand on the internet. It got a ton of great press, and rightfully so. It produces top-notch quality prints with a really nice metal frame. It sort of defined the whole genre. There's lots of copycats now. You might have seen my last couple of videos comparing this printer to the Alphawise. Maybe an unfair comparison, as Creality does have other versions, much newer versions of this printer already on the market that are more closely comparable to the Alphawise U10. But I personally only have this printer to compare it to, so that's why I made those videos. Anyway, Creality is also competing with themselves, or I guess you could say that they are constantly improving and making many new printer designs and putting them out there, one of which would be the Ender3. Now, I also did a review video on that printer, and I was really impressed. Surprisingly so. I didn't expect to like that printer as much as I did, as much as I do. And in fact, as I've said before, this has become my workhorse. The printer that I use most of the time, because most of the prints that I do are pretty small. And the fact that this one gets up to temperature in under 5 minutes, and that means that the bed heats up to 100 degrees in about 5 minutes. So I can print in any material within reason. Of course, I can't do polycarbonate or like PEEK, these very high temperature materials, but all of the normal materials from ABS to PETG to flexibles and even, of course, PLA. It would be nice if I could get a Creality printer that does what that printer does, only with a larger build volume. And I think this is going to be that printer. So here we have the Creality Ender3, new in the box, straight from China. And today we're going to assemble this printer and put it through its paces to see if it lives up to the Creality brand name. So let's roll that intro and get right into it. This promises to be a really easy build, so I'm just going to do it real time with some fast forward action. Okay, so it's not quite as easy as I thought. This is still a kit. It's not going to be very hard, but I think I will time-lapse this. This is the print which we just watched being made, and it's phenomenal. I think it's the best that I've ever seen. We don't see any ghosting or ringing artifacts in this print whatsoever, and that can entirely be attributed to the stiffness of the frame here on the Ender3. It's really out of this world. I don't know what else to say. It's really good. So this was printed at 60 millimeters per second, and we can see the spire quality and also the ceiling, the roof quality up in there where it was bridging. It's about the same as what we observed on the test print from the Creality CR10 a couple videos ago. So yeah, that's crazy, because this was printed at 60 millimeters per second, whereas the comparable CR10 print was done at 45 millimeters per second. And to make it even better here on the Ender3, let's take a look at this print, and I did this at 90 millimeters per second. And I also went half again as fast on the travel acceleration and the printing acceleration. So with those settings just really high, we're starting to see the faintest amount of ringing or ghosting after these letters here. Actually, this is about the same as the amount of ghosting that we were getting on the CR10 at 45 millimeters per second. So it's really phenomenal how stiff this machine is. Of course, at this 90 millimeter per second print speed, we start to see some pretty bad oozing going on, as well as suffering of the quality in the spire. We're just not getting enough time for the layers to cool down. And you know what? For some reason, when you tell Cura to have a minimal layer time, it doesn't. It'll go layer to layer instead of waiting 10 seconds on each layer like it's supposed to. So yeah, just phenomenal prints. And basically it comes down to the fact that this machine is so stiff. It's the stiffest machine I've ever seen, so it's yielding the highest quality prints that I've ever seen. But you know, it's not perfect. I'll bet I can find something wrong with this machine. So let's try testing out the bed and see how long it takes for it to get up to 100 degrees. This bed has significantly more surface area than the bed on the Ender3. And the primary appeal of the Ender3, as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that it gets up to temperature, up to 100 degrees in about 5 minutes. I mean, you get great quality prints. That's kind of required, but the speed at which it heats up, it's the great thing about it. So let's see how well the Ender3 stacks up to the Ender3. So we were at room temperature. Looks like we still are at 25 degrees. And that's going to start heating up, and we'll just watch the timer. Not bad. We're at an PLA printing temperature in about 2 minutes, so that's a pretty quick. I mean, I guess 50 to 60, somewhere in there, so 2 minutes to 3 minutes for your PLA bed temperature. Okay, we got to 70 degrees in 5 minutes, so we are way behind the Ender3. Man, I don't think we're going to make it. We've been sitting at 92 degrees for quite a while now, so I'm just going to shut the camera off and let this play out and see if we ever get there. I don't know why I still have the timer running. It's not really valid anymore. But at some point at 92 degrees, I decided to throw this cork over the top of the bed, and it then reached 100 degrees, as you can see. Okay, giving this another try with, you can see the cork. I've now installed it underneath the bed. And we've reached 99 degrees in 18 minutes and 45 seconds. Let's see if it gets to 100 degrees. All right, well, 100 degrees in just over 20 minutes, but we definitely reached the 100 degree mark with the cork underneath the bed. So apparently that's a necessary modification to do to this printer. Well, here's a design flaw. There's the nozzle, right? And we all know that little dribbly bits tend to come out the end of the nozzle, kind of like this little piece right here. And the 0 position is just ever so slightly off the bed. So when it starts to print, the bed moves like this and shears off the little dribbly bits, and they fall right there. Why is that a problem? Because this hole right there is the fan that blows air onto the main board. And whoop, there goes my little dribbly bits, plugging up the fan, getting all over the main electronics inside there. That's a big design flaw. Speaking of the control board, let's have a look at it. Underneath these heat sinks are the stepper motor driver boards, and I'm sure that the chip running those is an A4988 chip, which is the good old standby on all these 3D printers. Like 90% of 3D printers come with that chip. It doesn't even start to compare to the Trinamic stepper motor drivers, but you know, it works. Also something that works, but it's pretty meh, is the ATmega 1284 main processing chip right there. Not nearly as good as the ATmega 2560, which is the chip I would like to see. So this board is really not upgradable at all. If you're gonna upgrade this printer, you're probably gonna have to install a whole new control board. I'm unclear whether or not this would take a dongle to program. I think only the original Creality CR10 had that issue, but it's got the smaller USB driver socket, so who knows. Anyway, these are all just glorified Arduinos, so you should be able to figure out a way to flash the firmware if you really want to do that. But this printer is whole and complete and works just the way it is, and I can't really think of an upgrade that I would want to do to this printer. So the fact that I can't upgrade the board is really not such a tragedy in this case. The screen here is a variant of the Rep Discount full graphics display. So it has the animated icons like we're seeing happening right there. So that's nice. It's good that we don't see the little small displays without the icons, with just the text. We don't see those anymore. But you know what we've started to see? Touchscreens. So it would be nice if this was a touchscreen. The final thing to test is print resume on power loss. So I have a print going here. It's working fine. We'll just unplug that from power. Plug it back in, and we see this message. So we'll just choose yes. So once it gets back up to temperature, it's going to resume printing right where it left off. The only problem is there's a big nubbin of ooze that sort of oozed out while it was just sitting there waiting to start printing again. So hopefully that won't cause any problems, and we'll see a nice print here. I've stopped this print so that we could see where the resume happened, and we can see there is a small, slight layer shift. It's minuscule, but it's there. So it will cause a slight artifact if you have to resume after a power loss, but it's a whole lot better than having a ruined print. Up here at the top of the printer, we see the classic Creality hook for holding your filament spools. And this functions perfectly well when you have a normal size spool. It rolls nicely and it cannot fall off of the printer. However, I've on numerous occasions bought these wider rolls, like this one right here. And the problem with this is that it's just slightly too wide so that that nut doesn't catch the spool. So when this one goes to fall off, like things happen while things are printing, nothing stops it from falling off. So, yeah, it's just, it'd be so easy to extend that by like a centimeter, maybe 1.5 centimeters. I don't know why Creality hasn't done that. I'm sure there's probably a solution already on Thingiverse. It's annoying that it comes in the box just slightly wrong. Just the details. It's the small little details. The hot end Carriage Assembly is exactly the same as what's on the Creality CR10. So we know it's good, we know it works. It has the nice centrifugal blower fan with the little whoop, fan nozzle directing air thingamajigger. Now that Pet's Fang duct that I showed you guys in the last video, and yeah, I'll link it right here in this video as well. It's definitely an upgrade. You get part cooling from both sides of the nozzle, which it's better. Back here we see the plastic extruder filament tension mechanism, and this is probably the exact same mechanism as the CR10 and the Ender3, so it's very easy to load filament through it and it works just fine. But it is plastic, and that's not so good if you put this into a heated enclosure. Speaking of plastic and not so good in heated enclosures, what about this thing? This whole case here is injection molded plastic. So that means it's a thermoplastic. This replaced the piece of acrylic or plexiglass, which is a thermoset, whereas a thermoplastic is infinitely meltdownable and reformable. So this, in a heated enclosure, is much more likely to fully deform than the acrylic was. So the old acrylic was a better solution than this. Now this looks a little bit cleaner, although I hate this big frickin', what is this, QR code thing. I'm gonna pull that off. But having this be something that could ooze and get soft and move in a heated enclosure means that this limit switch potentially could move on you. Not the worst thing. It would be far more critical if it was the Z limit switch down here that had that problem, but still not good. Here on the side, we see this nice cover covering the exposed wiring on the power supply. Now the power supply is nothing special. It's just your normal like 30 amp, deal. But this cover with the on-off switch is nice, especially if you live overseas and you have 240 volt mains wiring. So here in America, we only have 120 volt mains wiring. And I myself have been shocked by, mains voltage numerous times here in America, and it's unpleasant, but it doesn't even leave any lasting damage. Whereas 240, that gets real scary. So I understand why all of you folks living overseas are so concerned about having covers over your power supplies. But here in America, not as necessary, just a nice thing to have. Another feature which just sets this printer apart from all the other printers that I've reviewed are these massive leveling wheels. And we see those on all four corners. And they just provide really nice, precise, and easy to control motion. Now you could certainly print something like this for your other printers, but it's nice to have an injection molded version of that coming. I really like this. I didn't think I was going to. These look comically huge to me, but they're nice to have. Now let's talk about this printer's greatest feature, and that is the frame. This thing is so beefy. 2040, 2040, 2040 extrusions. There are only two 2020 extrusions. Those are plenty stiff just by themselves, and those are only in two places, the small ones. And down here at the base, these two are in a T shape. Those are 4040 extrusions. Those are like massively overkill. So bigger than anything we've seen on the large printers, meaning the AlphaWise U10 and the Creality CR10. And yet it is a much smaller printer. So that means that the forces acting upon this don't have the leverage of those longer arms, and that means that the forces are smaller and the frame is beefier. How much stiffer do you think this thing's going to be? Well, stiff enough so that we can get comparable results to the CR10 at twice the printing speeds. So yeah, it's great. One thing, and it's such overkill that this really doesn't matter at all, but up underneath here we can see this cutout. So this 4040 extrusion has actually been reduced to maybe 20 millimeters because of that cutout, which was done just so that the wiring could pass through it. But yeah, that frame is awesome, and that is the whole reason why this printer is so good. I mean, it's all of the mechanicals of the CR10 plus an amazing frame. I can only say one thing bad about this frame, and that is it came with the lower half assembled from China. So all I assembled was these four pieces. And if you look, it can rock back and forth. And that is because it was installed, slightly tweaked like that. So I have to go through, loosen the nuts, get it all straight, and then retighten everything before I'll be satisfied with it. The feet also are just these sticky rubber pads. I would prefer some more substantial standoff rubber feet. But I'm nitpicking right now, so it's just tiny little issues. And hey, they're things which are kind of fun to upgrade, real easy to do. I was just editing this video and I realized that I have a little bit of an inconsistency going on with the judgment of this printer. I forgot to fault it for not having dual Z-axis lead screws, and also for only having a single rail for that bed to slide on in the Y-axis. And the reason I'm not faulting this printer for that is because this printer is so much smaller that the leverage acting on those moments is not going to affect things. So we've seen the quality coming off of this printer even at super high speeds. Obviously it works. Another thing I wanted to mention is this putty knife that came in the kit. It's the best one I've seen. It's the sharpest one. It's almost sharp enough. I would actually put a knife edge on that. I'm going to sharpen it just a little bit, but you could just put that on the sharpening stone and it would be everything you need it to be. It's also very flexible. All right, well, let's do the point scoring matrix on this printer and see how it stacks up, numerically against all the other printers that I've reviewed. By the numbers, the Creality Ender3 is in second place here for all of the printers that I've reviewed. It narrowly beats out the AlphaWise U10 here by a point, and it's a long way away from snatching that #1 spot away from the TiVo Little Monster. That's just a super impressive machine, but you pay the price, right? This low price point on the Creality Ender3 ensures that it's going to get a good value score as well. Well, second highest point score and also a very high value score. I'm going to guess that the combination of those puts this in the lead as the most desirable printer that I have reviewed. So a really high score on this printer. But there are 3 features I would really like to see, to make it even better. And that would be filament runout detection, auto bed leveling with a touch probe, that means a BL touch sensor, and also a flexible bed, so you can easily pop your parts off. Now the flexible bed is pretty easy to add yourself, and you could potentially upgrade it to do the other 2 things as well, but you're going to have to replace that control board. So forget what I said about the upgradability on that board not being an issue. It is. We want to see those better boards so that we have the option without just buying a whole new control board. Although, if you're going to upgrade it, you might as well just put a touchscreen on it with a 32-bit processor. You can get an MKS S-based board for pretty cheap these days. Yeah, so I do recommend this printer, just strongly. I mean, I should just put the recommended stamp right here on the screen. If you are a beginner and you're probably not finding my videos, most of you watching probably are well versed in 3D printing, but if you have any friends who are thinking of getting into it, this is the printer to recommend. The quality of prints is just so good, and the ease of assembly, it's really easy to put together. So it's just a very user-friendly and high-quality machine, and it's reasonably priced at $250. So yeah, I should give the disclaimer here. As always, I don't make any money from these printers. GearBest sends them to me for free so that I can do reviews and get you guys the good information. But if you do want to purchase this, there will be a link in the description down below, and it does actually help me get more printers from GearBest if you follow that link. In other words, if they see my links selling printers, then they want to send me more printers, which means I get to make more videos. Yeah, all right, well, that's it for this video. This is YouTube. Hit all those good buttons down below, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.